Welcome. Suppose we have 12 colored cubes in an opaque bag. 4 of these cubes are red and the remaining 8 are green. We are interested in selecting 2 cubes with replacement. That means we're going to select one cube, look at its color, put it back in the bag, and then select our second cube. Let the event R denote a red cube is drawn, and let the letter G denote the event that a green cube is drawn. Part A, let's sketch a tree diagram representing this scenario, and then we're going to discuss how large is the sample space. Okay, so for our first draw, there are 2 possible outcomes. We can get a red cube or we can get a green cube. That's our first possible outcome with our first draw. So this is first draw. Now, there are 4 ways to get a red cube for our first draw and 8 ways to get a green cube for our first draw. Then we're going to draw again. And actually, I'm going to scooch this over just a little bit more. There we go. So when we draw again, our options remain the same. For the second draw, we either get a red or a green cube. And again, there are 4 ways to get a red cube and 8 ways to get a green cube. Now I went ahead and wrote each of these twice because if we get a red cube and we put it back, there are still 12 cubes in the bag and we could get either a red one or a green one. Similarly, if we started with a green cube, we could still get 4 red or 8 green. Now let's talk about a possible outcomes. So for each of these red cubes, there are 4 red cubes that can be selected. So the total possible number of ways to get red, so 2 red cubes are 16. That's 4 times 4. Now to draw a red cube first, there are 4 ways to do that and 8 ways for each of these red cubes to draw a green cube. So there are a total of 4 times 8 is 32 ways to get red then green. Similarly, to get a green cube, then a red cube, we'd multiply 8 times 4 for another 32 possible ways to get a green, then a red. And finally, to draw 2 green cubes, there are 8 ways we can do that on our first draw. And for each of those cubes, there's 8 ways we can do that on our second draw. So there are 64 total ways to get 2 green cubes. So the size of this sample space is equal to 16 plus 32 plus 32 plus 64. So that's 144. All right, let's compute the following probabilities, beginning with part B. So the probability of getting 2 green cubes, that means on our first draw we get a green, and then on our second draw we get a green. There are 64 ways to do this out of a total of 144 possible outcomes. So the probability of green then green is 64 over 144, which reduces to 4/9, and as a decimal is 0.4444. So 4 repeating indefinitely. For part C, what's the probability of getting a red then a green or a green then a red? So a red then a green, you draw a red and then you'd get a green. There are 32 ways to do this. Next, just starting with a green and getting a red, there are also 32 ways to do this. And this is again out of 144, so we end up with the same probability here. Okay, let's look at part D. So for part D, we want the probability of getting a green on the first draw and a red on the second draw. So this is the probability of a green on the first draw, then a red on the second draw. So green would be here and a red would be here. There are 32 ways to do this. out of 144. So this reduces to 2 over 9, which is 0.2222. Finally, part E. Now we want the probability of a green on a second draw given a red on the first draw. So probability of green given red. So red for our first draw is here, and green for our second draw is here. And again, that's 32 out of 144. So 2/9 or 0.2222. I hope you found this video helpful.